In this series, we make Marx accessible. We begin with capital, working through it section by section to break down Marx's main arguments and clarify what they mean. From there, the series will expand into later writings and traditions shaped by Marx's foundational ideas. The aim is to distill the key theoretical takeaways into just a few minutes, enough to make the text easier to approach without stripping away its meaning. We will not get lost in the weeds, but we will also not trade insight for simplicity. By the end of each video, you should come away with a clear and usable understanding of the topic at hand. Marx begins with the commodity because it is the basic unit of capitalist production, and it is a microcosm of capitalism as a whole. The opening chapters of Capital are therefore very important, because if we pay close attention, they display Marx's method and his fundamental conclusions about the capitalist mode of production. First, Marx says that commodities must be useful objects. They must satisfy human wants or needs. Each type of commodity is produced with a distinct type of labor. Weavers make fabrics, carpenters make furniture, farmers grow crops and tend to livestock, and so on. These commodities are then exchanged for each other on the market. Marx notices that each commodity has different qualities and serves different functions to the consumer, and yet all commodities seem to be exchangeable. One coat, for example, tends to trade for 10 bags of grain. But how do people compare, quite literally, apples to oranges? If commodities are qualitatively not the same, what determines the ratio of quantities exchanged? Marx says that commodities must share some common unit that allows them to be compared on the market. The common unit, Marx argues, is labor. All commodities are products of human labor. That labor is qualitatively different from commodity to commodity. The labor of a weaver and the labor of a carpenter is not the same. So it is not the specific, concrete labors that determine exchange ratios of commodities. Instead, it is labor in general, an abstract human labor that must exist in all products that come to the market. When commodities encounter each other in exchange, nothing of them is left over except the same ghostly objecthood, a bare gelatinous blob of undifferentiated human labor. Of human labor power expended without regard to the form of its expenditure, as crystallized pieces of this social substance, which they consist of collectively, they are values. What Marx is saying is that abstract labor, the measuring stick for the value of a commodity, is not a physical quantity, but rather a social category, meaning it exists at the level of social forces and connections. This social category is crystallized, which is to say it is physically manifested in commodities. When two individuals exchange commodities at some ratio, they are saying that at this ratio, both sides of the exchange represent an equal amount of abstract labor. But here Marx interjects with another important caveat. He says, we might be tempted to think that since the amount of labor expended to produce a commodity determines its value, the lazier or more incompetent the person producing it, the more valuable the commodity will be. It is not just the abstract labor time spent on making a commodity that determines its value, but the socially necessary labor time, which is to say, the labor time given average conditions and techniques of production. In later chapters, we will see that less productive companies are punished in competition by having to sell at a price below the value of their commodities. For now, it is enough to say that the requirement of average productivity and technology is quite important for the analysis. Marx often talks about individuals and sole commodities, but much of his actual critique happens at the level of society as a whole. The concept of socially necessary labor time and its connection to value makes that clear. In order to actually derive a socially necessary labor time, you need to look at the economy as a whole. In other words, you need to look at the social scale. And here again we see how value is a social category. The kind of labor that determines the value of commodities is abstract and social in nature. It can't really be understood at the micro level alone. Just to drive the social nature of value home, consider another extract from the text. Commodities possess value objecthood only insofar as they are expressions of the same social denominator, human labor, and that their value objecthood is thus purely social. This point should make the following one clear. The value objecthood of commodities can appear only in the social relation between commodity and commodity. Hopefully, it is clear by now that value isn't a quality that can be touched or weighed. It's a feature of the capitalist economy itself. Does this mean we have two worlds in Marx's analysis, a physical and an ideal world? I would argue that Marx's description of capitalism is not dualistic, but actually monistic. The physical and the ideal don't exist in separate worlds. Moreover, the union and interplay between the physical and the ideal is precisely Marx's point, and is a large part of why he chooses to start with the commodity. He dedicates the last pages of the chapter to showing how value, despite being a social element, reflects back on the physical world in a very tangible way. This is his discussion of fetishism. He uses the now lesser-known meaning of the word fetish, an object of worship that is believed to have magical properties. The fetish in Marx's analysis is the commodity itself, which, despite being inanimate, is possessed by value. Marx writes, "The mystery of the commodity form amounts then simply to this. The form reflects back at people the social characteristics of their own labor as objective characteristics of their labor products, as socio-natural properties of those things. And so, the commodity form also reflects back at people the producer's relations to the totality of labor as a social relation among objects that exists apart from and outside the producers themselves." The commodity has this kind of power over people in capitalism because it is the mediator of economic relationships. Producers are not in conversation with each other directly about how much and what to produce. Instead, things are produced privately in different workplaces and then brought to the social space that is the market. In the market, the labor of the weaver and the labor of the carpenter are equated when their respective commodities are exchanged. Economically speaking, this is the first point at which the weaver and the carpenter actually encounter each other. Thus, to the producers, the social relations of their instances of private labor appear not as direct social relations in which human beings are connected by their work, but as what is in fact the case here. Things mediate the relations among people, while there are social relations among things. This tension between the ideal and the physical is a central theme in Marx's analysis. Marx stresses that the commodity is not passing between the physical and the ideal worlds, but is always in both at the same time. It is an object that can be touched and consumed, but it is also a value, a reflection of social labor. So why does Marx begin with the commodity? Because it offers the perfect opportunity to display the inner workings of capitalism, and because it gives him the space to tease out his philosophical argument about the dialectical pressure between the physical and ideal forms. It's both an economic and a philosophical starting point. This video is brought to you by MeansTV, a worker-owned, anti-capitalist streaming service. If you want to help MeansTV build a viable haven for leftist media and enjoy its excellent selection of content, we strongly encourage you to sign up for our membership. By clicking the link below and signing up, you would be supporting both MeansTV and our channel. The link offers you 20% off of your first month or 20% off of the annual plan. By subscribing, you would be paying into the establishment of an alternative, anti-capitalist media space. You would also be directly supporting our channel. And, of course, you would get access to incredible content. If you're able to spare $7 a month, this is an excellent use of that money.